I've spent the last decade talking about bodies, mine, other women's, and somewhere in the middle of it, I stopped believing the version that I was teaching. I don't want to talk about my body anymore or anyone else's really, and I've not wanted to for a very long time. And what is underneath all of that is the reason I'm recording this today. As you can see, I'm in a different location today. I'm actually in Florida. And before I left, my mom actually encouraged me. She's like, maybe bring your mic just in case you want to record an episode. She's like, you might regret it if you don't. Well, I guess she was right. So here I am with my mic that I traveled all the way from Toronto with to share something that's been on my heart that I've been probably a little too afraid to actually talk about because I spent a decade talking about my body and other women's bodies when it came to fitness, movement, loving it, and that whole journey to self-love. And I think the reason why part of it was difficult to actually be able to talk about is because not only did it become my mission to help women on their journeys to love their bodies, but it became so much of my identity and I didn't quite recognize it. But if I'm really honest, it was the smaller version of what I actually believe I was supposed to do in this world. Does that mean that everything I've done the last 15 years in content creation around empowerment is a waste? Absolutely not. I do still believe a lot of those things. But what I believe more now is that there were bigger things that I was trying not to actually address in myself and in others that is a much bigger conversation than just the shell that we live in every single day. I think also our bodies was something a little bit easier to focus on and it was a little bit easier to digest. And to be honest, with the whole body positive movement, it was a very big focal point and I became a little bit distracted with that body positive movement because when I first started sharing on socials, it was after winning Miss Plus Canada in 2014. I had just gotten out of an abusive marriage. I was rebuilding my life at 30. Here we are doing it again at 40. But for me, I went through this whole journey of learning to love myself. And because I spent the previous 30 years absolutely hating my body, I thought that that was the biggest piece. But so much of the work that I did on the inside back then is also the work that I've continued to do the last 15 years. And if you were coaching with me, so whether you were a member at a gym of mine or you were coaching with me one-on-one or you joined any of my workshops, any of the things that I did, I talked about body, but I always went to the heart of the matter because I knew that that was the bigger conversation. I just was afraid to publicly talk more in depth about it, especially from the anchoring of a spiritual conversation, which really was my biggest impact in my own personal journey of learning to figure out that God loved me the way that I was and I didn't need to do anything to attain it. But I didn't know how to share that message when it came to having a platform. And if I'm honest, after winning Miss Plus Canada and realizing, okay, I'm actually going to do this thing, I'm going to start sharing more. I'll share more of my story. That's how it really started. And the whole fitness realm and the whole fitness world kind of came by accident. I've shared multiple times, but I was fat shamed at a gym, a women's gym that I had been attending for 2 years. And I was doing a mountain climber on the TRX, which is a very challenging exercise. And I had to work up to that because I had been in a few car accidents and my shoulders and my neck were really, really sensitive. So working up to that was a feat in itself. I had a woman who was also not tiny look at me and say, "Are you sure you have medical clearance to be here?" And I was like, I was floored. And this space that I thought was safe no longer became safe. And all I could think about was, I know I'm not the only plus size woman that just wants to feel good in her body, be able to move it, and without being shamed by people in that same space. And I don't know that many people's logical next step would be to then decide to become a personal trainer, which is what I did. And I doubled down on it. An opportunity came up to have a gym in a shared space. I sold my condo. Any proceeds that were left over, 30 grand, went into buying equipment. So buying dumbbells and kettlebells and battle ropes and all the things so that I could start this business while also working full time because I really believed in this mission and fitness had really been such a big part of my life. But to be honest, I think I got a little bit distracted and yet I went full throttle into that. Not only did I open one studio, I then opened a second studio in Toronto. And I tripled down on that, took out a $60,000 loan with an organization called Futurepreneur that works with entrepreneurs under 40 to help them start businesses. And of that 60,000, 15,000 went directly into renovating the space, putting in a shower, making it beautiful. I also left my full-time job at that point because I knew that I couldn't do both. And I started teaching classes 7 days a week. And then I started realizing how mammoth this was and that I was one person trying to figure it out. I hired other trainers and tried to build a team. I wanted to make sure they had the same model that I had. So it was really important to me that all my trainers were inclusive in how they spoke and they provided modifications. I had a very signature program with that. However, one of the very first things that happened when I was launching was I had quite a bit of media coverage, and BlogTO did a post about this new gym that was opening in Toronto. And at the time, there was another gym that was also in the body positive space because everything was about body positivity at the time. And I hadn't really called myself a body positive gym. At that point, I had been in the body positive space for about 7 or 8 years. And this specific gym, some of their members went and left comments on this very public article about me that there was somebody else already doing this and that this girl needed to F off. And what that did for my confidence, self-esteem, and all of this that I had sacrificed my own money, all of my extra time, and it became my life. It was so disheartening and so hurtful. And that was only the start of the attacks that I received from them. I was blasted on their social medias. It was really, really hard. And I was having to navigate this, and I never wanted to talk about it publicly as it was happening. I think I remember doing one live in response to some of it. And I felt really uncomfortable to be able to do that, but I decided after that day that I was going to no longer address these attacks that were coming at me. The attacks didn't really stop, and they did block me on socials. And I decided at that point that I was not going to address them anymore, and I was just going to keep moving. But that time period was so hard because it really affected my self-esteem, my confidence, being able to move forward, what people thought of me. And so I kind of put myself in a box because of that. And so then I decided that I no longer wanted to be a part of the body positive movement. So I stopped using the phrasing body positive. I stopped talking about being body positive. Body positivity also became this whole other conversation and kind of in this fat liberation space, which is never what my intention was. It's not what I ever desired. It felt very uncomfortable to me because I was never in the position of fat and proud. I went through this journey of absolutely hating myself and finding a way to learn to not only just accept myself, but love myself as I was and continue to show up in spaces and represent other women who looked like me. But it became my whole personality. It became my whole life. And it became so much bigger than I ever intended for that. I ended up doing a lot of TV. I was on City Line and Breakfast Television as a fitness and self-love personality. I never wanted to just talk about fitness. So I always made sure we were still having conversations about the heart because I knew that that was the biggest piece. But I kind of got lost in that whole world. And when I went through my own personal difficulties in life with starting over at 40, being single again, and being a mom, I recognized things weren't serving me in that capacity. And I think becoming a mom also really shifted things for me because my whole priority changed. And I was now raising this little girl, and I didn't want her to, one, experience the things that I did, but I also didn't want to, what's the word? Project my body image issues on her. She is naturally a larger child. She was 3 weeks early born at 9 pounds and 11 ounces. She is half a foot taller than most of the kids in her class in kindergarten. And I never wanted to project those things and the things that I had been through, bullied and all of that kind of stuff. I just wanted to affirm her. But I didn't want to constantly be talking about my body in front of her, other women's bodies in front of her, or her body, because I don't want the focus to be on bodies. And so when I had to go through this whole shift of rebuilding my life, I started to recognize this was no longer serving me. And that's really hard to admit when you've spent the last 15 years doing that. And I now see so much purpose in God asking me to take a year of rest after closing down my fitness business because I was able to untangle myself out of this identity that I had built in this space. Now, with all of this said, do I still think there's value in the body positive community? Yes. Do I still think there's value in learning to love and accept who you are just as you are without any changes? Yes. But it doesn't mean that you have to stay where you are if you decide you want to lose weight, if you decide that you want to stay the way that you are, if you are happy doing what you're doing. All the power to you. My biggest concern for myself, my daughter, and any other woman in my circle is that it starts in the heart and the body is the least of your concerns. I also think going down the fat liberation route can also be really detrimental. It's also really hard because I'm I don't want to go down the conversation of health conversations. There are so many things we could sit here and unpack. And so this is not me sitting down and saying, F this, don't do this. That's not it. I'm just saying it no longer serves me to talk about bodies. It's also why you probably, if you've followed me for years, you have noticed I no longer share a lot about clothing. I don't not longer share, I don't share my personal fitness journey all that often. Sometimes I do. But what I wanna focus on is women in the holistic view, and that is your body, soul, and spirit, and you need all of them to be working harmoniously, and focusing on those harmoniously rather than just leaning into one, because when we take the focus off the others, we can start to have effects in other areas that we may not have intended as well. The other thing too, in being in a space where I was in a leadership position when it came to fitness, self-love, confidence, all of those pieces, I kind of felt like I ran out of ways to talk about how to be confident and how to be strong and how to be empowered, like, if I'm very honest. And when it comes to, like, bringing new people into the community, like, that felt like the easy win to be able to continue to talk about bodies because it was what people were still struggling with. But there are more things that people are struggling with than just their bodies. And I think that that's where the conversation had to shift for me not to feel burnt out, for me not to feel like I was repetitive, for me to feel like I was growing and moving forward, and for me to feel like I was making a difference in the world. Because the truth of the matter is, me sharing, me being on social media, quote unquote, becoming an influencer, having a podcast, for me was never about me. I kind of have seen myself as I don't mind sharing the difficult things that I've been through and the things that God has taught me and the tools that I've used to help other women as well. Like, that's my hope, is that I can come alongside you so that you, one, don't feel alone in your journey, but two, to show you that, like, it is possible to change your life and make the changes that you want and to dream big and watch God transform things and make ways where there seems like there's no way. That's my hope in everything that I do, and that all glory is brought to him because it has nothing to actually do with me. I just hope to be his hands, feet, and voice here on earth, and that really is the crux of it. It's not about, I wanna show you, "You need to do this, you need to do that," and I think that the body positive world has kind of, like, forced that on people of, like, "This is what you need to do, and if you do this, you're not as body positive as you say you are," and, like, the attacks have come from every angle, and that's not enjoyable. I think the other thing for me too in closing my fitness business was I was tired of selling myself on social media. It was so much work to constantly be making content that was going to provide value and convert people into clients, and I just honestly got burnt out from doing it for so many years that I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't serving me, and again, talking about something that was shifting inside of me as well. So when I look at having to claim bankruptcy and having to close the business and all those pieces, I can now look back, and it's only been less than a year and a half since it's been closed. I can now look back and see the purpose and why it had to be done that way. And if I'm really honest, if I look back after my marriage as well and losing my job and rebuilding at 30, so many of these things were these pieces of my identity that had been built that had to be stripped away for me to be reestablished in a different place that God had intended for me. And the same goes for you. If you have built so many things as part of your identity and it's no longer serving you, this is your permission to take stock of what is and let go of what's not. And I think that that's the hardest part of letting go of, but I built this, I did this, but it was, for me, it was all I. I wasn't asking God every step of the way. I was doing things in my own strength. I was doing what I thought other people wanted from me. I was very careful in my wording when I was posting on social media, in my captions, in my videos, all these things, because I didn't want to upset the body positive community because I had been attacked so much. And because of that, I also was no longer able to show up as authentically myself as I wanted to. And that is really hard when I don't really know how else to be other than be me. And that whole time, I still felt like I wasn't enough because I wasn't performing enough. I wasn't making enough. I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't converting enough. And yet I was making it my whole life, my whole personality. I literally would only think about business. And I never want to get back to that place because it's exhausting. I don't think that that's how God has intended things either. And you're allowed to change. And so I had to give myself permission to actually want to make change and realize that this wasn't serving me, and to take the time to, like, decompress, so that year of rest, and figure out, like, what is it that I want? What do I desire? Who am I? And how do I rebuild from this place of strength and clarity rather than performing for everybody else and making everybody else happy when I wasn't necessarily. I think the other piece to this as well is I kept talking about body and then being insecure in my body and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think it was actually really about my body. I was still feeling like I wasn't enough. I was still feeling like I wasn't enough and yet I was too much and still trying to fill the gaps of what everybody else thought I should be. And again, like I didn't talk about my faith because I was ashamed because of the situation I was living in. I also like stopped moving the way that I typically did when it came to my faith because all I was doing was business. And when I really narrow it down, talking about my body and other women's bodies and helping them navigate that was the easier conversation than actually saying, I don't feel like I'm enough and I don't know what to do about it. And that's where this inner work has come the last year of recognizing I am enough even when I'm not performing, that I don't have to perform to be enough. That was the bigger conversation. And my hope is in sharing about the things that I've had to process through, you can take a look and say, where is it for me that I'm doing things not based on what I desire, or what are the feelings that I need to identify about myself and rewire those thoughts so that I am coming from a place of strength. I'm coming from a place of feeling like I'm enough. Because when we're constantly chasing this, I want to feel enough, I want to feel enough, you're going to hustle and hustle and hustle yourself into the ground. And you will never reach this place of actually feeling enough if you're chasing the wrong things. And I think that, again, that's my hope in sharing is like, we need to let go of those expectations of what everybody else has for us and really identify who am I? What do I desire? What do I want let to look like? And what are the steps that I need to take to untangle myself? One, that's like the first step. How do you untangle yourself from the identity you've built to allow yourself to then rebuild in the place that you actually want to rebuild? In a nutshell, I thought I was insecure about my body, but I actually was never insecure about my body. I was just never actually fully accepting myself. I thought I was too much and yet not enough, all at the same time, and the body was the easier thing to focus on. So what does this mean for me now? What does life look like now? Does it mean that I'm no longer active in fitness? Does it mean that I'm not body positive anymore? Well, I actually wouldn't call myself body positive. I don't like the label. I don't like where the industry has gone. It's not something I identify as. I'm just me. And that is enough in itself. And for me, wellness is still a very big part of my life and something I'm still also very passionate about, just not just through the lens of your body. There's so many pieces to wellness. And the one piece that I was ignoring for so long was the sleep and the rest element. And that's one of the biggest pieces I've had to work on. That's been the hardest one for me to work on. I have no problem going out for a walk. We've been in Florida on vacation. I've also been working while I'm here. And we go out for a walk before I start working. We do 5 to 7 kilometers in the morning before we start. Movement is still a very big part of my life. Being here, is it realistic for me to try and strength train? No, so I haven't. When I go home, I'll go back to it. But I don't have like this pressure on myself, like I have to do this. And if I don't, I'm not okay and I'm not enough. No, like I'm doing the things that serve me while I'm here in this season. But rest and joy were the two pieces that were missing so drastically in my life that I've had to work so hard at them to get there. And they've made the biggest difference in my overall wellness. And the third, which should have been at the top of the list, is also my spiritual well-being. When I was working so much and hustling and being the boss babe, um, I didn't make time for having time in my word and spending my time in intimacy with God. And so one of my biggest ways that I spend intimacy and prayer time with God is journaling my prayers. It's been something I've done for over a decade that has been so powerful and instrumental to me because it's almost like I'm sitting having like a conversation with God, just journaling it out. It allows me to flush things out. It also allows me to reflect when I look back at things as well. But those three things have nothing to do with actually performing with my body. And that's what I focused on for so long. And so I had to get those things in check before I was able to continue to do the other things that I want. And I still think it's really important to take care of the heart, mind, and soul as well as the body. And so I just do it in way more balance. I no longer do 2-hour workouts a day. My walking is what is important to me. I really enjoy walking. It's so great for my mental health. It's also when I listen to podcasts or sermons and fuel my spiritual tank as well. But as an adult, I had not really experienced rest and being able to have good sleep. And if I look back, like when I was little, I could fall asleep anywhere. People used to joke. We would watch a movie, I'd fall asleep on the floor, in a couch, in the back seat of a car. And as an adult, because my nervous system became so overwhelmed from how much I was working and how much I was doing and hustling so hard, I no longer knew how to rest. And it literally took me over a year of rest. Like even in this year, I'm still working on my nervous system calming down, but it's taken over a year for my nervous system to get to that place of like being stable that I finally feel okay. And now I notice when something makes my nervous system go haywire, So another piece to this whole wellness for me is boundaries. I have to maintain really strong boundaries in a few areas of my life. Making sure I have time to read the word and spending time with God, making sure I'm having joy and I'm not always working. I have to cut myself off from work. If I could, I would work all of the time. I enjoy working, whether it's my day job or working on my own brand and the other things that I'm working on, but I know that that is not going to be beneficial to me. I also know that it will take time away from my daughter, and that's really important, and being present when I'm with her. And if I'm always working, I'm not going to also be pursuing joy, and that's another big piece that I'm really working on right now because I've been so much in survival mode for so many years and hustle mode that I have to detangle myself from that. So, again, to conclude this thought, wellness looks different to me now. And it's not just about performing in the gym, it's about taking care of my body, soul, spirit, mental health, having joy, and focusing on those things I mentioned, right? It really has made a big difference in my own life. And people notice, people are like, whoa, you are like a different person. Even my sister, I hadn't seen her in a few years because she had moved out west and she came back at Christmas and she just kept saying to me, like, nothing phases you. And I was like, you just roll with it. Like, doesn't mean that I'm always perfect. No. And she was just, I think she was shocked as well because she was like, you are so calm. And I wasn't always. I was very high strung. I was very ornery on certain things. I didn't fly by the seat of my pants at all. Everything was planned. And so for me, I've had to let go of a lot of those things and yet still maintain boundaries in a lot of areas at the same time. And one of the boundaries I've also had to have is to be true to who I am. So if there's something I don't want to do, I communicate that rather than saying yes to everybody. I had to keep boundaries for myself. And it's not something that people talk a lot about. But if I said yes to everything, I would continue to lose me. And I'm not willing to lose me anymore because I did it for too many years. Another reason why, even on my socials and the podcast, why this has not been about the body. I thought it was about time that I actually addressed it all, which is why we're doing this and having this conversation. But I'm allowed to change my mind on what I want and how I want to share and how I want to show up in this world. And so are you. You have full permission to decide what is in my life right now is not working for me. I need to make some changes. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to change directions. You're allowed to change your situation. You're allowed to do that just as I am. And I had to give myself permission before I could even talk about it in this capacity. So I was very intentional in choosing a scripture verse. I mean, I am every week, but this one is perfect for this episode and really the foundation of this entire conversation. And really my mission and what you can expect from me when it comes to the podcast and how I operate and where my priorities are. I don't have my Bible. I didn't bring it with me. I have a Bible on my phone, so I'm going to read from it. But it is Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And that is the biggest piece for me was realizing so much of the conversation was about bodies and mine, other women's, helping women on their journey when it came to their bodies. But when it comes down to it, every single thing you do in life actually flows from your heart. And if your heart is not in check and your heart is struggling, your heart is broken, your heart is in pieces, your heart is tired, everything else is going to flow out from it. So that means how you show up for work, how you show up for your kids, how you show up for yourself. If you are not taking care of your heart, so many other things are going to be affected. And that's where this conversation has shifted and changed for me, where I no longer just want to address the body. I want to help you tend to your heart and tend to you, because when your heart is in a different place and it's healthy and it's whole and it's functioning properly, everything else flows so much differently and comes from a much different place. You can stand in your power and your strength in a much different way, and you stop trying to catch up to being enough, and you recognize that you are, and you stop operating out of a deficit and start operating in the surplus. And that's what my hope is for you and for me as well, is to be able to operate out of that place, and that we're able to recognize when, ooh, that reaction, or ooh, that decision, that is a good check for you to see, ooh, something is off. What's off? What do I need to address? Oftentimes for me, that means that, oh, I haven't spent enough time reading my Bible. I haven't spent enough time praying and having intimacy with the Father. Usually for me, that's like a really good sign. It could also be a sign that I haven't slept well or enough, or that I worked out too hard. That's been another interesting piece in this journey is I've been tracking in an app called Bevel, my sleep, my nutrition, my movement. And normally I would just like not listen to my body and just keep going harder and harder. And now I can tell when my body's like, "Ooh, girl, your recovery is not working because that sleep was not good because you stayed up too late to work last night." And I have to scale back and adjust and allow myself to have the rest so that my body can recover so that I can show up differently. Again, part of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle in terms of the body. But being able to identify those things will continue to help you navigate and actually show up the way that you want to show up. I mentioned earlier in the episode as well how I wanted to be more mindful about how I was showing up when it came to raising Brooklyn, who is going to be 5 in 5 months, and already hearing her little conversations about herself, how she speaks to other people and her confidence. I'm very proud of like the work I've done on myself to be able to allow her to be in that place. People constantly comment on her confidence, how she speaks, how she shows up, how she is with people. And to be honest, if I look back at how I was operating when she was a baby, I'm so glad I took the time to make the change because it would have affected her if I didn't fix it. And it keeps me in check moving forward as well as I make decisions as we're moving forward, figuring out what life looks like, all of those things. It keeps me in check because it's one thing to want to do something for myself. It's an entire different thing to want to do something for our children. And on the days that I'm like, I don't feel like it, I don't want to, this is too hard, I remember her little face. And I remember how important it is for me to take care of myself so I can take care of her. That's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is I need to be able to guide her and show her because they are little sponges and will watch and do the things that we do. And so I need to be careful to make sure that I'm operating in a place and my heart is in a place that it's healthy and it's whole so that I can show up that way so that I can model for her what she is going to develop and grow into. And that for me was my biggest motivator in making the hard decisions was I know that if I don't make certain changes, she's going to see them and I don't want her to model those behaviors or those thought patterns or those types of things. I don't want her to constantly see a tired mommy who can't be present and have joy in her life. I want that to be the mother experience that she has. And so I have to constantly keep in check to make sure that I'm doing those things. And now I can recognize when they get off track as well. But that is one of the biggest motivators to work on your heart. If you have kids or you plan on having kids, do the work now so that when the time comes, you are in the place that you are going to be the leader that you desire to be when it comes to modeling for your children. So to wrap this whole conversation up, let's bring it back to this. If you have outgrown the thing that made you, this is your permission to put it down, whether it's for a time and a trial to see if this is the thing that you need to put down or if it's for good. Even if people expect you to keep carrying it, in my case, a lot of people still expected me to keep carrying on, talking about fitness and self love and confidence in our bodies. Even if a part of your identity was built on it, the thing that made you is not the thing that is keeping you. And you are allowed to grow past a version that got you this far. You don't need to stay where you are. You are allowed to keep progressing. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to want different things and you are allowed to change the course you are on. So if you need to sit with this and just give yourself permission, that is probably the first step. And the next is going to be unpacking it, untangling it, taking some time to let that settle, to figure out who you are, to figure out where you want to go and what steps you need to take next. And you may not know every single step all at once. It might come one at a time, and that is okay. Just take some deep breaths, realize that it's not a race. And so much of our life is about the journey and not necessarily the destination. With that said, I think another piece to this to also address is, do I resent the last 15 years and the things that I've done? No, they've made me who I am today. I'm able to show up in the capacity that I show up in today. And one of the things that I actually think is so fascinating when connecting with other women is hearing their stories and the things that they've done and that they've accomplish and the things that they've done in their careers and their personal life and how it makes them who they are and all the different elements that continue to play a role in their current role. So don't resent the past. Don't resent decisions you've made or identities you've carried. They got you to this place and they will continue to carry you forward and they will continue to carry you forward. You're just allowed to make some decisions on changing what that path looks like and discovering new parts of yourself and tapping into new things and allowing for that to happen. That's my hope in sharing all of this today, was to give you that permission of it's okay to make that change. And we'll also probably answer a lot of questions that people have as to why I no longer talk about bodies. Even while I was here, I did a little bit of shopping and got some clothes, and I went to go like do some Instagram stories of like what I bought. And I literally walked into my bedroom and I was like, why am I doing this? I don't care to show this. So that was very interesting. So it's not just about fitness for me. It's like so much has shifted and not wanting to be superficial and talk about the things that, like, I was used to talking about, and so even now, I still catch myself of like, "Oh, that's past me. Oh, that's former identity. Oh, those were former things that were important to me that are no longer really that important." Does it mean that I'll never share about fashion? No. Does it mean I'll never work with other brands? No. Does it mean that I'll never share about fitness content? No. I just want a more holistic viewpoint and operation in this world because I think it matters more, and again comes back to the heart, and my heart is different because my heart is much more healed and in a much different space than it was before. There is one more piece to all of this that I've been working up to being ready to share with you. I've been sitting on it for almost a year. And I think I'm almost ready. So in the next couple episodes, I'll probably be able to share about that and tell you the rest of it. But it has to do with, again, changing my mind in terms of the direction of things I wanted to go in. It means what became important shifted as well, and what I wanted to move forward in is also shifting as well. I would love to hear if you have any questions actually on this episode. I would be more than happy to do a Q&A on some of the thoughts that we shared today, whether it's leaving the body positive space a long time ago. This isn't a new thing. So drop those questions in the comments, or maybe you've left the body positive community, or maybe it's still really important to you. I'd love to hear in the comments what stuck out to you or how this conversation made you feel. I'd be really curious to hear as well. But thanks so much for joining me. I'm Sarah Taylor, and this is the Becoming Podcast, Faithful and Unfinished. See you next time.